Now, basically, I'm going to cover uranium minerals of the Northern Territory, which basically focuses on the three main areas. And I'll be covering the history and the minerals of the deposits. Next. Not good, this works. All right, so basically we've got, it's a bit hard to see, but up the top left corner, you might be able to just see Darwin. I'm not sure if I can actually use my cursor to point out these or not.
No, you won't be able to, but I can.
All right. So Darwin's in that little dotty area up the top left-hand side. Yeah, that's it, Darwin there, if that helps people identify. Due south of that, we've got the Rum Jungle field. Right over to the right, which is marked Alligator River uranium field, which was really the Kakadu area. And below that's a long, skinny area, which is the South Alligator River area. And as you can see, the dates of when these were operational, it gives you a bit of an idea of sort of the progression. Next. Okay, region 1, Rum Jungle. Rum Jungle is a region located 65k of Darwin and 8k north of the township of Bachelor. Now, you can probably see here, of note, you may not have heard of most of them, but one you might have heard of is not actually a uranium mine, which is Brown's deposit, where a lot of the malachite and poromorphite has come from in recent times, or over recent times. But that one actually didn't contain any uranium. Back in 1869, prior to the Northern Territory being declared, and when the region was still part of South Australia, the South Australian Surveyor General had chosen a town site and named it Darwin after Charles Darwin. From here, he moved inland to map out new towns and survey the country for farming. They cut up huge areas south of Darwin into settlement areas, one of which was called Goyder. One of Goyder's earlier reports made reference to the presence of a green slaty material, probably torbanite, in association with malachite. It was found near a huge quartz reef on an earthquake fault in what was called the 100 of Goyder. The surveyors named the reef Grand Reef and is still known as that today, and is only a mile or two from Rum Jungle. This region was prospected by many fossickers, including the Chinese, and in 1907, copper was reported 1 mile west of the earlier reported occurrence. This became known as Rum Jungle Copper Mine. Some shaft sinking and minor exploration was done, but the results were not encouraging and the works were abandoned. In 1913, 2 diamond drill exploration holes were drilled to test the copper mineralisation at depth. From the 1915 report from the Director of Mines, the 2 bores put down, in my opinion, wholly inadequate to thoroughly test the property, and the results of the assay made these cores proving unsatisfactory. In April 1948, to encourage the search for new deposits, the Commonwealth Government offered several incentives, including tax-free rewards, fixed at £25,000 for the discovery of payable uranium in Australia. Next slide. Jack White, a prospector, had moved to Bachelor after the war and took mining lease over the old copper mines. And in his exploration in the old shaft, Jack picked up some rocks that puzzled him. They were shot with iridescent green that looked like some copper ores, but wasn't quite like anything he'd seen before. None of his prospector colleagues could tell him what the stuff was either. He didn't give the samples another thought until 2 years later, when the BMR, the Bureau of Mineral Resources, government department, produced a booklet containing coloured illustrations of uranium ores. Jack read the booklet and realised the striking resemblance to his samples. Next slide. Now, this is the actual booklet, and that's the page with the colour photos. And I think he did a damn good job if he could identify what he had from those photos, because they're pretty average, but he must have seen enough similarities. The number 4 is actually supposed to be autunite. It's supposed to be yellow, but it looks a bit more green to me. And number 5, I presume that the Mount Painter torbidite was enough to give him an indication that it was possibly torbanite. Jack went back to the spot from where the samples were previously collected, dug a trench 15 foot long and collected green and yellow samples, sorry, which he then delivered to the mines department in Darwin the next day. The Minister for the Interior announced the find on the 6th of September 1949. Geologists were sent to the area by the BMR immediately on receipt of this report and confirmed the presence of the uranium-bearing minerals. Prospecting and mining operations began in early 1950. Subsequent investigation left to the discovery of Dysons, White's Extended, Browns, Intermediate, Mount Finch, Mount Burton prospects. In the following year, White's South and Crater prospects were also discovered. Jack received his £25,000, which is about $1 million in today's valuation. Next slide. Okay, there, that's different to the one I've got anyway. The Rum Jungle ore deposit occurs with the relatively small area, locally known as the embayment. The ore bodies are restricted to black peritic shale slates of the lower Proterozoic Golden Dyke Formation near the contact with the underlying Kurmalite dolomite. The mineralisation is probably younger than the granite complex in the area. White's mine was best regarded as a copper-rich uranium deposit. Unfortunately, the surface exposure was not very impressive. The country rock slates occurred over a length of 60 metres and were widely stained by secondary copper minerals, mainly malachite, with only a little torbanite and yellow ochres. Next. I seem to have missed one slide, but anyway, not to worry. We'll go with this. Now, there we go. Sorry, I've just had one part of this out of sequence with my paperwork anyway. Can we just go back one slide? Sorry, Sue, if possible. Yeah. All right. Yeah. This is the earliest photo of the first uranium mine that we had, which in the territory, which was White's, and that's just the top of the shaft. In March 52, the United States Atomic Energy Commission sent a party of experts to Australia at the invitation of the Commonwealth Government. The party was accompanied by representatives of the UK Atomic Energy Authority. Discussions took place regarding the basis of the development of the Rum Jungle field. Agreement was reached on broad principles and arrangements were made for funds for the project to be provided by the Combined Development Agency. The Joint Anglo-American Uranium Purchasing Organisation. In August 52, the Commonwealth Government made arrangements with Consolidated Zinc Proprietary Limited for the management of the Rum Jungle project. Then, by January 1963, the 10-year contract for the supply of the uranium for the Rum Jungle to the US and Great Britain was brought to a successful conclusion. It resulted in the delivery of about 12 million kilos of uranium oxide, and it was a profit to the government of £3.3 million. The Rum Jungle project was the biggest single industrial enterprise for the Northern Territory at the time and was estimated to be responsible for directly or indirectly somewhere between 1/4 and 1/3 of the total economic activity in the territory. Okay, now, next slide, thanks, Steve. Now, these are from some of the remaining Mines Department photos and maps, but it appears like the standard procedure was to dig these costains across the countryside and then sink a shaft, which would then give them the full picture of where the ore bodies were. And this seemed to be common practice for all of the mines. Next slide, thanks, Steve. White's deposit. The ore body was a steeply dipping layer deposit. The various layers in order from north to south: the uranium copper zone, the copper cobalt zone, the cobalt nickel zone, and the lead cobalt zone. So it was a sort of combination of various different ore bodies sort of right next to each other. The uranium copper zone had a narrow oxidized capping containing secondary minerals and various green and yellow uranium ochres, which included torbanite, autunite, phosphouranolite, gumite, salite, johannite, zippyite, and chopite. Most of these minerals are usually powder in fine grain, but coarse flakes of torbanite and autunite were not uncommon. I'm finding from a lot of these reports, I don't think there was too much looked into the mineralogy, and I suspect, like most of these places, if there was crystals around, they were never really recorded unless it was really significant. Now, pitch blend, a lot of it, which is uraninite, of course, was first noted at the 9-metre level, which was the water level, and basically was predominantly fine and sooty. Interestingly enough, in the cobalt copper zone, you had ore body chalcopyrite, chalcocite, digenite, bornite, bornonite, cubonite, and cobalite, which is sort of pretty stock standard. In the cobalt nickel zone, that was basically linnaeite, carolite, and gersdorfite, which is quite an interesting, unusual combination for Australian deposits. And in the lead cobalt zone occurred galena and linnaeite. Next slide, thanks, Steve. It was initially mined out by stoping underground, but then was changed to an open cut. And it reached depths of 112 metres. The ore body was 150 metres by 25 metres by 112 metres. Total excavation was 3.5 million cubic metres. Most of the deposits there were not huge, but they must have been rich enough to undertake. Next slide, thanks, Steve. Dyson's is another one in the area. It's about 915 metres east of White's mine on the western flank of a low ridge. The uranium mineralisation was indicated by a strong radiometric anomaly during a BMR ground survey in 1950. The prospect was named after the geophysicist in charge. At the surface, the uranium-bearing minerals were mainly autunite with smaller amounts of yellow ochres, brilliant yellow nodules of skladowskite with traces of uranosferrite, and occasionally green secondary minerals. No copper, lead, or zinc, cobalt, or nickel was present. Salite was the predominant mineral to at least 42 metres depth, and pitch blende was known from 25 metres depth. So, yeah, interesting that the main ore body was salite, by the sounds of it. And again, you can see from the map, they've done 3 costains and then put a shaft down to do a geological map. Next slide, thanks, Steve. Dyson's ore body was 60 metres long, 8 metres wide and 100 metres deep. 2 shafts were originally sunk and converted to an open cut. Mining began in 1957 and was completed by 1958. This is sort of pretty much a story for most of the mines in the area. They didn't work for long, but I think there was a bit of a rush on to provide the uranium. The oxidised uranium mineralogy was almost entirely salite, occurring as grey-green micaceous plates or books on cleavage planes and fracture planes. Other uranium minerals recorded were compragnosite, ningyoite, uranopillite, and uranospherite. Next slide, thanks, Steve. The Rum Jungle South Mine is located 7k south of White's Mine. Several radiometric anomalies were found during airborne surveys in 1952, 56 and 57. This became the largest uranium deposit in the Rum Jungle area and was larger than the original 2 Whites and Dysons together and of a higher grade. The ore body at a max dimension of 245 metres by 61 by 80 metres depth. Excavation began in April 1961 and was completed by August 1963. The primary ore consisted of bitumen, which was fine sooty coating with limited salite forming small pods near the surface. And that must have been interesting enough because they've actually put them on the geological map of the salite pods. Next slide, thanks. That's just one of the only photos I could find of the old mine. Interestingly enough, with the uranium minerals that mainly seem to have survived from the other two and not so much from this one. Okay, next slide. These are just a couple of the other earlier photos. You can see their high security at the gate to the Rum Jungle area. It was pretty much a restricted area. The top right-hand photo I think is White's. Was never actually labelled, but was the only colour photo which gives you an idea of the black slates that the ore bodies seem to occur in. And the other one's just Dyson's, gives you a bit of an idea of how they used to operate in those days. Next slide, thanks, Steve. Yeah, very difficult to find people that do have any of the uranium minerals from there. But fortunately, the Victoria Museum did have a few. These were collected, one on the left, compragnosite, was collected by Bill Birch in 77. I think that was when he was up there to do the first Rum Jungle dig. And it would have been before all these areas have been rehabilitated. The top right one, that's from a Morby collection, so that would have been a very much early piece. And then there's also bottom right, some of the massive Skladowskite. Next. A few pieces do seem to float around here and there of salite from Rum Jungle, but unclear as to actually which mine it was from. At the bottom right-hand corner, in the 50s, the Australian Atomic Commission published a couple of small booklets, I think trying to promote and educate people on uranium minerals. So there's going to be a few photos in this presentation from those two booklets. And that one's the showpipe. Next slide. Interestingly enough, when going through the Victoria Museum material, the one on the left had the original label, as you can see, salite, And both Oscar and myself, when we looked at it, thought this can't be right. And he has run a test, and it looks like a uranium mineral called tonight. But he was going to do some more work on it. Definitely a bit of an odd one. Uranopellite on the top right, mainly powdery coatings, and also waterite, a bit more crystallised on the right hand side down the bottom. Next slide. Again, another sailite from Rum Jungle, and these are a couple of ones from the booklets. Sailite, which look pretty green, but very hard to tell on some of these photos from the 50s, and then scladowskites, just the massive yellow. Next. Now this is the Johannite, if that's how you pronounce it. And interesting to note that it's a post-mine oxidation product. Okay, that completes Rum Jungle. Next slide, thanks, Steve. Second area is the South Alligator River area. South Alligator River field is situated 220 km southeast of Darwin. The country is rugged and wooded, but the wide valley of the South Alligator helped access. However, initially access to the area was only available in the dry seasons, June to December. More than 20 uranium deposits occur in the South Alligator River area in a zone of approximately 50 by 3 kilometres. 13 mines operated in the area. Interesting, the local Aborigines called this area Baladjand, which means sickness country. The BMR began exploration in the South Alligator River region in the late 40s, and in 53, the BMR geologist Bruce Walpole wanted to explore the upper reaches of the South Alligator River. When reaching the red bluffs, he struck radioactive rocks high up on the face. It was Coronation Day for Queen Elizabeth on the 2nd of June 53, and Bruce named the spot Coronation Hill. George Slees, a mining engineer, and Toby Becker from the Northern Australian Uranium Company, both were involved in Rum Jungle, were following up from aerial reconnaissance, which revealed a reasonable chance of uranium. Time was running out for the company. They had spent a small fortune on prospecting ventures and money was running out. There was talk of withdrawing the guys and George and his team from the Upper Catherine area if they did not make a strike quickly. Finally, on the 23rd of June, they struck rocks that kicked the Geiger counters off the scale. A little chipping turned up the green mineral torbanite. The surface counts were high and extended over such a wide area. While George left to drive 100 kilometres to the nearest phone to break the news, other field crews were roving the hills and turned up new radioactive loads not far from the original strike, with higher surface counts. The find was named Sleesbeck, combination of their names. Sleesbeck proved to be a disappointing bonanza, however. It had massive outcrops of uranium on the surface, but did not live up to initial promise. With the discovery of Coronation Hill and the Sleesbeck began an intensive combing of the region. Jack Smith, a guy called Jack Smith, had spent 2 weeks combing the craggy bluffs without finding anything. Then late one day, he reached the summit of an almost perpendicular ridge, and his Geiger counter began to click wildly. Walking along the ridge, the clicking grew stronger and faster. Early the next morning, his team returned to the ridge and opened an outcropping reef of brownish rock. All Geiger counters went off the scale. The pecking of the lease got underway immediately, and they named the lease after their 3 daughters, mixing the names Ellen, Sharon, and Anna, and got El Sharana. El Sharana was probably one of the main mines there. Surface work on the lode began almost immediately. It needed only a few blows of the pick on the red-brown rock at the summit to reveal that El Serrano was fantastically rich at the surface, the richest strike on record at the time. The rock was almost solid torbanite and autunite, and the reef stretched for more than 100 metres as an outcrop on the surface. Next slide. Again, this sort of geological, and it does show most, I think the bottom right-hand corner, you can see Coronation Hill, and Sleesbeck was actually a bit further south of that, but too far off the map. You can probably see that the saddle mine in the area, it sort of tended to be in sort of clumps. You had a group of mines there, and then just up a little bit further there was another group, and then right up the top there was Dwyer's. It's a bit hard to tell from to read on these old maps. Most of the deposits in the South Alligator River were found distributed along a northwest tending structures within the kaolin formation of carbonaceous, chloritic and pyritic black shale and slate, except for Coronation Hill, where the uranium was found in a volcanic neck. The mineralisation is found close to or in contact with the Carpentarian sandstone, with dolomites. Next slide. Now, El Serrano was exposed in a shallow trenches for a length of 37 metres over an average width of 7.5 metres. To the west of the trench occurred an outcrop of a lode with a predominantly display of yellow and green oxide mineralising, rising a metre above the ground for a length of 5 metres. This first attracted prospectors' attention from 50 metres. It sort of would have been nice to have actually seen what that was like, to see a torbanite and autunite deposit from 50 metres. From exploration drilling, the ore body was revealed to be 108 metres long at an average of 14 metres wide and up to 67 metres deep. Next slide. Pitch blende occurred as irregular masses and was really sooty. A larger boulder was recovered at the 18-metre depth, weighing 978 kilos, and another at 816 kilos. At the time, it was the biggest recorded mass worldwide. There were so many museum-type specimens showing graduation from pitch blende to oxides. In May 1961, when the largest boulder of the pitch blende was brought to the surface, the scientists of the Australian Atomic Energy Commission, realising the great educational and scientific value of the specimen, advised the commission that the commission should purchase it from the company, and that was done. The boulder was said to be worth £5,000 for the uranium content. Next slide. After being displayed in Darwin, it was shipped to Sydney, but because of its great weight, it was only displayed a few times at the Royal Easter Show and a special exhibitions in the Sydney Town Hall. The Commission then generously presented the specimen to the Australian Museum, where it was on permanent display in a special case. Yellow and green coatings of yellow secondary uranium minerals can be seen on top of the surface of the pitch blende. The New South Wales Health Department had stated, after measuring the amount of radiation from the specimen, that to obtain the maximum daily permissible radiation dosage, a person would have to stand on the spot from where the specimen can be viewed for half an hour every day. But I quite often wonder where this specimen's gone. Just recently at the mineralogical seminar, one of the guys from the New South Wales Museum, Ross Pogson, was saying that with the new policies, they've basically taken all radioactive minerals off display. So I wonder how they would have really gone with this one these days. El Sharana and El Sharana West were the largest producing of high quality uranium ore amongst the mines of the South Alligator River Valley. And it was originally an exploratory shaft of 6 foot by 4 foot, timbered with sawn bush timbers and equipped with a timber head frame. Ore was hoisted to the surface in kibbles built from 44-gallon drums and tipped into a half-ton mine truck, which then discharged it into a 5-ton truck to transfer to the sorting area. Ore was extracted for 2 levels, the 50-foot and the 100-foot, which followed the richest lenses of the pitch blend ore. Ore raised from the shaft and the pitch blend stope was spread out on the surface, and lumps were handpicked, sorted, used weighing and visual means to select pieces. Gold occurred as veinlets within the uraninite or as separate zones of mineralisation. Next, thanks, Steve. The Palette deposit was discovered at the base of a vertical cliff near the top of the Skinto Plateau. The Palette ore was complex and unusual in that it contained exotic minerals such as klausthalite and colorado in plentiful quantities. I don't think a lot of these unusual minerals actually survived, unfortunately. The ore body showed rich surface mineralisation, with phosphouranyl and uranophine being the most common, and the primary mineral occurring as massive sooty pitchblende. Gold was found in veinlets, in shrinkage cracks, or as disseminated particles in the pitchblende. Next. The Rockhole mine lay to the north end of the field and consists of separate sections: Rockholes, Rockhole 1, Teagues, O'Dwyer's and Sterrett's. The bulk of the production came from the highly selective mining at the first 2 mines. The mineralised zone was at least 700 metres long, and a vertical range of the ore deposit was 120 metres. Mineralisation at the Rockhole mine consisted of stringers and pods, lenses of massive pitchblende or sooty fractures coating the shoots, which vary from 1 to 6 feet in width. Next slide, thanks, Steve. Saddle Ridge Mine has the distinction of being the only ore body in the South Alligator field which was comprised almost entirely of secondary uranium minerals, mainly metatorbanite. The ore body measured 61 metres long by 30 metres in depth. Coronation Hill was a uranium gold ore body. The primary minerals were uraninite and gold. They were worked from an open cut and a glory hole. The gold richness was 10 grams per tonne. Interestingly, a separate ore body also exists there behind it, which is a gold, platinum, palladium deposit. The deposit was valued in 1988 at $1.5 billion, but being on Aboriginal land, it will not be mined. The Sleesbeck mine was a small ore body of medium grade, and in 1957 an open cut was developed down to 12 metres, and the ore was trucked all the way to the Rum Jungle treatment plant. Next slide. This is just the original one with the Coronation Hill mine and how it looks today. Next slide. These are just some of the old mining photos. I think it was fairly remote and fairly rough and ready in those days, but it sort of gives you a bit of a picture. Even you can sort of see the guy on the top right-hand side having to sort of push the ore carts out by hand. I think there was a lot of sort of bushcraft, and they just did what they had to do with what they had. Next slide. This is the El Sharana after they did the open cut, just to give you a bit of an idea. You can get a bit more a picture of the land, but like I said earlier, a lot of the this area is very subject to, because of remoteness, subject to the weather, and during the wet season, not necessarily accessible. In 1956, Ian Threadgold from the CSIRO Mineralographic Investigations in Melbourne, he was presented with a suite of specimens representative of the ores of El Sharana, Palette and Rockhole mines for research. His publication on these minerals was a most valuable scientific publication. He states that the primary mineralisation of the ore body of El Sharana consisted of nickelite, Rammelsbergite, safflerite, galena, clausthalite, chalcopyrite, pyrite, marcasite and gold. He then describes the following uranium minerals. Next slide. Thanks. I don't even know how to get my mouth around the band, and you can read the label, might be safer. Again, from the Morby collection, it would be interesting to chase down where this guy Morby was able to obtain all these specimens. And then on the right, there's the Rutherfordine. Next slide. You've got curite. Unfortunately, a lot of, or very few specimens tended to survive, but a lot of them were labelled no better than just South Alligator River. So curite was recorded, masuiite, the quirolite. Next slide. Again, these are from the booklets, phosphouranyl, cassolite, the orange coating. Next slide. Meta-autunite, autunite. Again, nothing terribly great crystal-wise, but I suspect most of these people were not collectors that collected it. It was more maybe geologists, and it was a rich sample. So I would imagine it could have been crystals from there, but not necessarily anybody was a collector. Next slide. We've got metataurbanite and taurbanite. Next slide. Soddyite. Again, you did actually get that in crystals, microcrystals, but again, location, exact location details were not recorded other than South Alligator. Next. And the other minerals, uranophane, these ones I didn't have photos of, metazonerite, salite, renardite, dumontite, uranopillite. Next slide. Threadgoldite. And Threadgold also described a few unknown minerals in those samples, on one of which he called Mineral H, which was from the Rockhole mine. In 1979, others noted a new mineral from Kakadu, Zaire, that had similar powder diffraction patterns and optical properties. And they named the new mineral Threadgoldite to acknowledge Threadgold's discovery of the new mineral H. Subsequent studies from Dermot Henry et al. In 2005 revealed the presence of Threadgoldite from the El Sharana, from the Palette, Rockholes, Saddle Ridge and the Sleesbeck mines. So end up being quite common up there. Next slide. There's just some other micro crystals from the other mines, from Palette and El Sharana. Next. Uraninite has been previously described as minute particles to large masses, but no crystals of uraninite had been recorded. Uraninite from many of the mines also contain between 1 and 5 ounces of gold per tonne of uraninite. In addition to Threadgold's described minerals, 2 additional minerals have been recently recorded: bransebolite and metauranosite. And from what I can gather and what I've seen, this one on the right-hand side, you get these uraninite masses and you get like these shrinkage cracks, or as it breaks down, and you get the secondary uranium minerals filling the cracks. Next slide. Again, top right-hand, very massive pitch blend. That's El Sharana. And again, below that, you've got what probably was a uraninite vein, again, which has got all the secondaries forming in the cracks. And unfortunately, the left-hand photo is a little bit hard to recognise what's what, but that had the Klausthalite and Coloradoite. Next slide, thanks. Okay. The third region, which is Kakadu, which will basically, though there's several mines there, this is the more recently mined deposits, but we'll just focus on Ranger 1 and 2, which were the main specimen producing mines. Okay, next slide, thanks, Steve. The Ranger mines were located within Kakadu National Park, about 230 km east of Darwin. In 1969, airborne spectrometer surveys were carried out by Noranda Limited, and they identified 9 highly intensive anomalies. In 1970, followed up by ground geological, geochemical and radiometric surveys, together with geological mapping, found substantial mineralised zones. Eventually, 2 viable ore bodies, number 1 and number 3, were discovered. Mining of the number 1 deposit commenced as an open pit mine in 1980 until exhausted in 1994. The number 3 deposit was opened as an open pit mine in 1997 and ceased in 1912. I think you can probably see the darker areas marked on the number 1's the bottom one, and number 3 is the top one. Right down the bottom was number 2, but that never got mined. Next slide, thanks. The Ranger number 1 deposit is 250 metres long and about 120 metres deep in the centre, and comprised of 2 ore grade zones. One is highly brecciated zone that averages 1% uranium oxide, the other a smaller zone of 0.15% uranium oxide. Ranger number 3 deposit, 160 metres long, has an intensely brecciated ore body 2 to 3 metres thick that grades up to 8% uranium oxide. Above this, a wider, weaker brecciated zone contains 0.15% uranium oxide. The 2 ore bodies were 150 metres apart. Mineralisation occurs as fine grain pitch blend in veins less than 10 mil wide. The primary ore included pitch blend, monazite and coffinite. Next slide. Thanks, Steve. Saliote was the main secondary mineral in the Ranger deposits and was found as thin tabular crystals up to 25 millimetres across. Saliote occurs in clusters of bright lemon yellow green luminescent crystals, and larger crystals tend to be translucent with darker green centres, while the smaller crystals are generally transparent. Both deposits have produced many world-class specimens. Next slide, thanks, Lou. These couple of photos mainly from Bill Birch's article in the Australian Journal. But as you can see, the top right-hand side give you an idea that specimen's 14 centimetres across, so some of the crystals were quite substantial. As a general rule, you can pick the difference between pit 1 and pit 2. The pit 1, they tended to be a bit more opaque, whereas the pit 3 tended to be a bit more transparent. Next slide, thanks, Dave. Again, you've got the saliites and actually some crystals of torbanite. I've had to rely on getting photos from a lot of different people, so they're not quite up to the standard that you guys produce, but it'll give you an indication anyway. Next slide. Left-hand one, I haven't got a scale, but this was taken inside the pit, and you can see the spattering of saliite on the rock surface. And then even just the colour range on the right-hand side, from the lemon green into an almost orange colour. Next slide. A couple of other odd ones. Duwindite occurred from number 3 deposit as bright canary yellow transparent tabular crystals. They typically occur as small books and clusters. Torbanite had been formed on the duwindite. It had also been recorded from the number 1 deposit, but I didn't have any details other than it was reported. Dumontite occurred from pit number 3 as flat, elongated, bright orange crystals, striated parallel to the C-axis. The crystals were up to 1.5 millimetres long, and the colour was found in various shades of yellow. These ones, fortunately enough, the mine geologist there was Arnold van der Hayden, who was also the mine geologist at the Broken Hill open cuts. So he was a mineral collector and kept an eye out for things that were different. Otherwise, I suspect these sort of things would have never been recorded. Next slide, thanks, Lee. Parsonsite occurred at the number 1 ore body as yellow-orange bladed to acicular crystals forming sprays up to 1 millimetre across, associated with saliite. You can probably see on the bottom right-hand photo the little orange needles of parsonsite. And on the top one, you can see you get reasonable coverage of the material. Other secondary uranium minerals recorded were autunite, curite, cassiterite, meta-autunite, phosphouranyl, renardite, skladowskite, uranopillite, and waiartite. Next slide. Rabgicite was found in the number 1 ore body as bright yellow bubbly coatings on the rocks. The meta-torbanite from number 3 ore body occurred as lustrous, transparent emerald green and transparent pale apple green crystals. Some were with frosted appearance. The crystals varied in habit from octagonal to blocky pseudo-cubic with modified pyramidal faces and are up to 1 millimetre across. From ore body 1, it occurred as transparent, thin, platy crystals up to 1 millimetre across the surface with saliite. Next slide.